Going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412 here. Just wanted to make a video kind of going over the 2024 draft class now that we have completed the 2024 NFL draft. The Pittsburgh Steelers absolutely crushing it again. We'll go over the draft class, kind of what I think they bring to the table, where they got better, kind of evaluate the entire thing here. I mean, very clearly, Andy Weidl's handprints over this thing, and that's not to take away from Omar Khan, who I think does a great job at just getting value out of each pick, understanding the way that the board is going to fall. But Andy Weidl, in terms of the team building process, prioritizing the trenches, I think his handprints are all over this yet again. First and foremost, in the first round, Troy Fautanu, the offensive tackle out of Washington, who it does sound like he's going to stick at offensive tackle. Absolutely love this pick in terms of the value. I had him as the number 11 player in this class. They get him at number 20. And I think slots right in. I'm curious to see how they do line up. Does he go to the right side? There's been a lot of talk about Broderick Jones wanting to get him back to the left tackle spot eventually. Is that eventually this season? So we'll see if it lines up. Broderick, Sayamalo. We'll talk about Zach Frazier here in a bit, their second round pick, James Daniels, and then Troy Fautanu, and that would be absolutely stellar, in my opinion, the way that they've rebuilt, reshaped this offensive line in such a short period of time. Again, just really prioritizing those trenches, understanding that it all starts up front. Andy Weidl bringing that influence over from Philadelphia, where they've done such a great job, not only drafting, developing, but replenishing the offensive line when the time comes to do that as well. So Troy Fautanu, great athlete in space, powerful, violent hands. He punches you 4 times right off the snap. But like elite in space, in my opinion, just people mover, like everything that you want in an offensive lineman. And he makes up for, maybe a little bit of a lack of length at the position to a degree. I think the arm length is solid enough to be able to stay out there, but like it's 6'3", the arm length, it is a little bit smaller for an offensive tackle. So that's why there were some questions about him kicking inside the guard. But you watch him on tape, and he answers a lot of those questions, in my opinion. So I think that he's going to be able to stick at tackle. And again, was the number 11 player for me in this class. Friend of the show, Derek Bell. Go check out his content as well. He's going to have a ton of stuff coming out from this draft class. Had him as his number 7 player in this draft class, just to give you an idea of how high we all were on Troy Fautanu. I think that we were all kind of locked in on maybe like a Graham Barton. Mims obviously got taken before the pick. He got taken by Cincinnati at 18. So at that point, Graham Barton was there. All the corners were there. But Fautanu, too good a value for the team to pass up, obviously. A little bit of a knee thing popped up maybe a week or so before the draft that people were talking about. Could we see a potential slide here? Maybe that is why he falls to 20. I don't know, but Steelers get great value, in my opinion, there in their first pick. And then again, I already kind of alluded to this selection, Zach Frazier in the second round at 51. We knew we needed a center. Were they going to have to, jump up to get one when we saw Jackson Powers Johnson go in the 40s to the Raiders? Maybe a little bit of sitting on your hands and waiting. Wondering if somebody else was going to jump up to select Zach Frazier, or if the Steelers were going to have to make a slight trade up to do so. But again, going back to Omar, just letting the board come to them, making sure they get the best value at each spot, let it play into their hands, and Zach Frazier falls right to them at 51 for them to take. Definitely a functional athlete. I'm not saying that he's a bad athlete by any means, but that's probably the one question that I have about this whole thing. Just because Arthur Smith's offensive scheme just requires, a really good athlete to play the center position. And I'm curious to see how that translation is going to go for him. But man, he just fits the Steelers mold. He's their type of guy, hard-nosed, again, powerful, good anchor, good base, violent hands. When he gets out in space, can bowl you over. I mean, I think that he's a enough athlete to be able to climb to the second level. I think he's a functional athlete. There's just some questions for me. He's not the hyper athlete that they drafted pretty much everywhere else in this draft class, the third most athletic class when you talk about total relative athletic score, RAS. He's the only one that was in the 7s. Everybody else, man, they were looking for 9+ RAS guys, and they got them. So obviously really liked him as a player. Feel like he can fit the scheme. I'm curious to see how this translation goes, but I certainly like the pick. Keeping him relatively close to home, obviously going from West Virginia, Morgantown to Pittsburgh. And I think he's going to fit right in culturally wise. And I'm excited about this one. Roman Wilson in the third round, a receiver that they were highly linked to. I had gotten a text after round 1 wrapped up that said, with the way the board fell to the Steelers in the second round, watch for Roman Wilson or center here. How about both? Roman Wilson falls to them at pick 84, and there was a lot of wide receivers on the board at that time. So much so that, don't get me wrong, I like Roman Wilson, and again, going back to the like cultural fit thing, I think that he certainly makes sense. I don't know that he would have been the first route that I would have gone, taking into consideration like the football perspective. But when you bring in other dynamics, willing blocker despite not having the largest frame, definitely wants to get in there, doesn't mind getting his nose dirty, reliable hands, and I just think he's a cultural fit coming from that Michigan program. So I think a lot of things, football plus the other side of things, we're taking consideration with this selection. People are talking about like Hines Ward and stuff. I never want to do that type of thing. Whether it is from a football or a non-football perspective, comparing guys to other guys. But I think Roman Wilson's certainly going to fit in. Seems like he's already kind of embraced this. I think project probably to most of his snaps coming in the slot. I do think he is versatile enough at times to be able to line up on the outside. But I would assume, most of his snaps will primarily come in the slot, but he's going to fit in right away. I mean, you look at the Steelers wide receiver room, certainly needed at least one addition in this draft class. It's Roman Wilson. We'll see if they go outside and look for a vet receiver, whether it's a trade or free agent route for somebody else. But this checked a big box for them that they had coming into the draft, and they think they got an immediate contributor. And maybe that plays into it as well, looking for a guy that can contribute immediately, even if he doesn't offer that same type of ceiling, like a high floor player that they know is going to be reliable and they can count on. Roman Wilson, certainly that. Also, man, the way that he tore it, I don't think he saw the most man coverage. Most successful receiver in college football last year against man coverage. Now, there wasn't I don't think that there was a limit on the number of snaps there, like a threshold that you had to meet in the statistic that I saw. But he tore up man coverage last year when he did see it, which is interesting because, like I said, projecting more to the slot. I like the way that he can find the soft spots and zone, and just I think he knows when to sit down and just be able to take advantage of that. So I'm curious to see how it fits, but I really like the fit. I would like to see them go out and get somebody else to play on the outside opposite George Pickens and let Roman Wilson cook in the slot. My favorite pick of this draft class, pick 98, Peyton Wilson, my number one linebacker in the class. Why did he fall to pick 98? He's got one ACL, a lot of injury history. He's had surgery on both of his shoulders in the past. A ton of season-ending injuries going back to high school. The medical records, I mean, it's a laundry list for Peyton Wilson. But he's been healthy the last couple of seasons, played in 11 and 12 games each of the last 2 years. He's been able to stay pretty healthy. And, I mean, again, going back to the hyper athleticism, this is a guy that can QB spy, 6'4", can line up in the slot and carry tight ends up the seam, play sideline to sideline. Has a little bit of trouble getting off blocks. I think that's probably, why you want to beef up that front four to be able to keep him clean and just let him fly around and make plays. But this is he's a hard guy to find a comparison for in the NFL just because of the height, weight, size, speed. Like, you do not see combinations like Peyton Wilson come into the league every year. In terms of everything that he carries and the way that he's built and can play the game of football. So I welcome the addition for sure. I think he's a great addition to the linebacker room, especially if you can get Cole Holcomb back too at some point. Very mum on that situation the Steelers have been. So we'll see how that progresses. Obviously went out and got Patrick Queen. So you talked about a room with Patrick Queen, Landon Roberts, Peyton Wilson, hopefully Cole Holcomb at some point as well. Not great news for Mark Robinson, who I thought, maybe did show something down the stretch last year in the last couple of games to be part of this process moving forward. But Peyton Wilson just fell into the team's laps. And I think very similarly to Darnell Washington last year, for similar reasons, medical things. People were talking about Darnell Washington's knees last year. Peyton Wilson falls into their lap. So I think just too good a value for them to pass up. Was my number one linebacker in the class, and they scoop him up at 98. Even if you only get one contract out of him, at that point, I think that was a risk worth taking. And again, just going back to welcome addition, certainly to this linebacker room who needed a body, and I think got a really good one. Round 4, Mason McCormick. This is where I think maybe people were a bit surprised, thinking they would go slot corner, potentially defensive line, maybe a double dip at receiver, something like that. They go offensive guard, a guy that's primarily played left guard through his collegiate career. Again, hyper athlete, 9.6 something RAS score. Definitely a great mover in space. Plays with his hair on fire when he's going downhill, when he's going uphill, climbing to the second level. So I'm really excited about this guy as well. Now, some questions entered my mind after this selection. Are they preparing for life without James Daniels, who has 1 year left on his contract, with the way that the guard market exploded? I'm not saying yes for sure. I think that they would still like to get something done. That's probably the one to watch this summer, in my opinion, in terms of potential contract extensions for the team. Isaac Samalo, also 30 years old, and again, plays the position where Mason McCormick has played most of his collegiate snaps, and he has 2 years left on his contract. So I just think it's, a great guy to get in the pipeline for future planning. I think you have to be prepared for James Daniels to walk, even if you would like to get something done there. And if you do get something done there, great. Maybe it's a Samalo replacement the following season. I don't know. So Mason McCormick definitely going to be a welcome addition, and 3 of the first 4 picks go on offensive line. Again, Andy Weidel has his handprints all over this thing. Omar Khan just getting value at every spot, and the way that they've rebuilt this offensive line very quickly lands a lot of credence to just building a foundation here and saying this is what we want to do. So Arthur Smith's offense, the way they've rebuilt this offensive line, the backs that they got, very clear the plan for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Wrapping it up here, 2 more picks they had in round 6. Logan Lee, a defensive tackle, like tweener. So I almost want to say defensive end out of Iowa, who will play probably anywhere from the 0 to 5 tech. I look at this as bad news for DeMarvin Leal. I mentioned the tweener. We've all considered DeMarvin Leal a bit of a tweener. They haven't had the most success with guys like this. But again, going back, they're looking for athletes. Great RAS score, 24 pressures last year, which was 4th in the Big Ten. Or I'm sorry, 28 pressures last year, which was 4th in the Big Ten, 21 stops. So I think that there's something there. I think the athleticism popped on tape a bit. Really loves the cross chop. That's kind of been his move. Goes to it a lot. We'll see if he can develop into something. But again, he's a guy that I think could push for, DeMarvin Leal's spot. We'll see about Isaiah Loudermilk. Like, I'm looking for a guy in that ilk, especially when you get into, the 6th round. And then Ryan Watts, the cornerback out of Texas, who might slide to safety. But I'll tell you what I'm really looking for here is what he's going to contribute on special teams. I think he's going to be a demon on special teams. 6'3", kind of we've seen the Steelers go to this mold for corners a lot. Didn't run the fastest 40. That's why people have kind of projected him sliding back to safety. We will see. But I'm really excited to get him here as well as a developmental piece on the back end. And again, I think he's going to contribute on special teams very early in his career here. And I do want to mention one UDFA as well, Beanie Bishop. And the reason I want to bring him up is because they didn't draft a slot corner, and then to get him as a UDFA, a priority UDFA, I think he's got a shot to see a lot of snaps in the nickel this year, despite being a UDFA. One of the guys they brought in for a local visit, and obviously clearly liked him, made him a priority once the draft wrapped up to get to an agreement. And I'm excited about the addition. I do think that he is a guy that, like I said, is going to contribute in the slot pretty early here, and has a chance to win the job. I mean, you look at what's on the roster right now, it's him. He's the only true slot corner, in my opinion, that is on this roster. We'll see if they make a free agent veteran addition to that room. I would imagine, yes, they're going to add somebody as a body that is also slot capable. But he could definitely be amongst the first, if not the first guys to get a crack at that spot. 3 interceptions last year, makes a lot of plays around the football. So I'm excited about the addition, about as excited as he could be for a UDFA. He's the one that I'm circling in this class. So really excited about what they came away with again. And I think that, like, as a consensus, people are seeing this as a top 5 draft class. They've done it again back-to-back years. Again, Omar and Andy just finding value up and down the draft class, prioritizing what they want to prioritize, very clearly having a blueprint and a plan for what they want to do. So I'm excited about it. Hope everybody else is. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We will be back. More full episodes coming, obviously. Hopefully get some more people back on the channel. But until then, this has been Smitty from Around the 412. We'll see you guys then. Bye-bye.